Hello. So today I thought I'd explain the process of creating my rusty botanical doodles. This is one of them. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. And it's coloured with rust. I'll set it aside. I created the rust solution with PaperArtsy Rusting powder and vinegar. I did for that one actually use white vinegar, but I've run out. I use a lot of white vinegar because I do a lot of rusting. But malt vinegar will do exactly the same thing, except it's got a little bit of a colour to it and it smells a bit stronger. I've got a mask on because I'm going to be shaking some of the rusting powder into this little pot here. It's just the lid of a drinks bottle, I think. I don't know what it even was, but it's just a plastic lid. You can use a metal lid, it doesn't matter, but just be aware that the rust might eventually eat through the metal. So I'm using a plastic one so that it won't. I'm tapping quite a lot of the rusting powder into the lid. I'm saying quite a lot. It probably just is a very thin layer over the bottom of the cap. And then I'm going to add some vinegar. Lid back on. And then I'm going to give it a stir. I'm stirring it. These are meant for putting glue onto projects when you just want a little bit of glue, but I just use them for stirring as well. It does take a little bit of mixing, but it does eventually mix in. The powder just wants to stop on the surface to set off with, but I'll just keep mixing until it looks as if it's in there. As you can see, it does jump about sometimes as well. I think it's just about mixed. And you can see it's already starting to react, because you can see the vinegar is going a slightly different colour. Right. So now what we do is we wait. I just tend to do this last thing at night, just before I go to bed, and then I set it aside until the next morning, by which time it'll have done its thing. It'll have turned into basically rusty vinegar. The vinegar might have evaporated, but I'll show you what we do for the next step if that's happened overnight. So I'll just leave it overnight and then we'll come back and do the next step. Hello, so we're back and my little bottle cap with the rusting powder and the vinegar has all dried up. I've left it a day or so because I had quite a lot of vinegar in there and it took a while to evaporate and to react. I did keep giving it a little bit of a stir, and I did add a fraction more of the rusting powder. But basically you just keep moving it around and it eventually dries up and leaves the rusty powder in the bottom. I've got a paintbrush. I'm just dipping it in some plain water and I'm just going to activate the rust again so that I can see that there's rusty liquid in there. You can see it on the end of the brush. Right, I've got, let's see, I think I'll use a micron pen this time, and then it is waterproof. You can use fine liners that aren't waterproof, and I've done that in the past and that gives a nice shading effect. But I think I'll do some just plain at the moment. So I'm just going to doodle. This is just plain white 160 GSM paper. And I'm just going to doodle Hopefully you can see this. Some flowers. Do one like that to set off with. We'll do another one with more petals. There we are. I'll do a couple with this is a fine liner, and it's not permanent, it's water reactive, so you can see the difference. I actually like the much finer point to this fine liner. They're just from the Works, a UK store. And we'll do one. There is another video on my YouTube channel about doodling flowers, but I'll just do those quickly. I'll get a little bit of water into my pot, loosen it up. I'll just try a little bit on this corner. Yeah, that'll be a nice colour. And then we're just going to basically colour in our petals on our flowers. Now bear in mind that this will have some of the rusting powder in it. This is with the micron pen, so these are waterproof. These lines permanent, so they don't react with the water that's in the rusting powder. Just a little bit more water. Just keep adding water to your little pot so that you get a little bit like watercolour. And you can see this reacts a little bit with the fine liner that isn't waterproof, and you can get a nice bit of shading. There we are. Just keep adding a little bit more if you think it hasn't got enough colour. You can go over a few times to get a deeper colour. They're more or less coloured in as I want. If you get any blobs of the liquid, which has obviously got the rusting powder in it, and you don't want them there, just get a Q-tip and just dab it on, and it'll just take it out. I quite like the fact that I get sort of like a mottled, painterly effect. Yeah, I think that's quite nice. So I'll move those out the way. I'm going to fill this page, so I won't put my brush straight in water, but normally I would, because you don't want the rust on the metal bit of your brush for very long. I'm just going to quickly dry that. Yeah, that's dry. Now, I've just got some scrap paper here that I use for the same thing all the time. I've got a fairly stiff, maybe I should get a bit, yeah, a fairly stiff brush. And because the liquid had the rusting powder in it, it is still in here. So you just gently brush it away, and it'll come off and you'll see it on the paper. So you just be quite rough with it, but don't tear your paper. And then you tap it off and brush it onto your spare paper. Which you can then put back into your little rusting pot. A bit like using embossing powder. You would put it back into your embossing pot, but this I put into my rusting pot for my rusty. Not watercolours, but you know what I mean. So there we are, we've got our coloured flowers and they are completely coloured with rust. I would then go in again and go over roughly sort of around the lines. I don't go immediately exactly over them again because it gives it a more painterly effect. So that's that. So around like that. Same here, just again. And this I think I'm going to have a bit more depth to the centre of the flower. So I'm going to do it with black, with little stamens coming out. There we are, and we'll do the middle black. So that looks quite nice. And then with a little white pen I'm just going to do some dots on the top. Just adds a bit of depth to it. And the centre of here I'll just do in white again just to make sure that it is white. So that's it, that's the colouring the flowers with the rust. You'll get different colours each time depending on how much water you put on, how long you've left your rusting powder and vinegar to sit, how much vinegar, how much rusting powder. It's all experimentation, but basically the concept is the same. If you add less water when you activate it for a second time, you get a deeper colour. You can see here I've got a lot deeper colour because the water has evaporated a bit more. So it's less diluted. But basically that's the general idea. Hello, so we're back. I've finished the doodled flowers. There's quite a lot on here now, different styles. Ones with a little bit squarer petals and a bigger middle, smaller middle, fewer petals, and then the anemone type ones with the dark centre. And I think they all look great. So they would look really good fussy cutting. You can doodle clumps of flowers like these two are joined together, and you could do leaves and then cut it out as a whole. I quite like to do them separately so then I can fussy cut them and use them how I want. It's entirely up to you, just use the technique for whatever you wish. I have also just done this very simple and quick spray of leaves. That was just done with the rust and no pen. I could leave it like that or I could add to it, but it's quite a soft look. So I hope you like the technique and I hope you give it a go. One thing I will say is I might seal these with a spray-on sealer, just so that it doesn't move, but it's entirely up to you.